The villages of Darfur are stepping stones across the desert, punctuation points every few kilometers in a largely roadless region as big as Texas. Look closely and you notice something eerie and sad, that in village after village there are no people. Many of these remote hamlets have been burned or abandoned, mute testament to a willful bloodletting that has taken the lives of over 200,000 Sudanese and driven 10 times that number from their homes. In 2003, when the long marginalized region of Darfur erupted in rebellion, it appeared at first as merely a sideshow. Negotiations were then nearing completion on a settlement to end the equally brutal war that the country's Arab Muslim rulers had waged for 2 decades on non-Muslim African tribes in southern Sudan. American and UN officials gambled that pressing ahead with the North-South Accord would resolve the Darfur issue too. They were wrong. Khartoum responded to the Darfur rebellion by unleashing a paramilitary force of Arab tribes known as Janjaweed. Their mandate? To burn the villages of the region's African tribes, also Muslim, to kill the men, rape the women, steal the cattle, abduct the children. Some say Janjaweed attacks are closely coordinated with Khartoum. Others that Khartoum has long since lost control. Either way, the result is the same: disaster for the people of Darfur. In 2004, a decade after the genocide in Rwanda, the international community vowed that it would not happen again. 5,000 African Union soldiers were dispatched to Darfur, plus another 2,000 police and observers. The force proved too small, too poorly trained and equipped, with too weak a mandate to enforce a ceasefire between Sudan's government and fractious rebel forces, a ceasefire all sides have flagrantly violated. Now the United States is pressing for the United Nations to take over the AU mission, with more troops and a stronger mandate to protect the civilian victims of Darfur. Sudan's government is balking, stoking public fears of an Iraq-style foreign intervention. Calls for further UN sanctions against Sudan, meanwhile, are stymied by the opposition of countries like China, the major purchaser of Sudan's newfound oil. In Darfur, the situation is grim. Over 2 million people remain in crowded, unsafe camps for the internally displaced, dependent on overstretched AU forces and on aid agencies that are beginning to pull out because of security concerns and lack of funds. Senior U.S. officials have been to the region repeatedly, pressing the Sudanese government to curb the Janjaweed Arab militias responsible for much of the violence and trying to focus world attention on Darfur. But to make a difference on the ground, it is clear that the United States will have to do even more.
So I've worked with the UN missions in Lebanon, I've worked with the UN in Cambodia, Rwanda, I was in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and I'm now here. In 1994 in Rwanda can be compared to what is happening here today. You can see that at the size controlled by the Janjaweeds, the Arab militia, they have the weapons. But the others, their neighbors, don't have. So they could go to their villages, shoot into the air, scare the people away from their homes, get into their rooms and their houses, take whatever they want to take, and then go away without any challenge. So I see the situation somehow similar. And if this is not controlled, it can explode into something worse than what we are seeing today.
Colonel Blebu says the situation today is not controlled, not in Darfur at large, and certainly not in the Tawila sector. Dali Camp, just outside Tawila, housed 18,000 internally displaced persons as recently as last September. That's when gunmen from the Sudan Army and Janjaweed militia attacked a nearby mosque and Dali itself. African Union police witnessed the attacks, but, unarmed, could do nothing in response. The people fled, leaving a ghost camp behind. Most headed for the mountains south of here. Some 5,000 found refuge at a new ad hoc camp located just outside the African Union base, in hopes that proximity to AU troops might give them the safety they sought. In northwest Darfur, along the border with Chad, there is no one left to protect, and the African Union has its hands full just trying to protect itself. The conflict has increasingly crossed the Chad border, with Janjaweed militias burning villages on the Chad side and rebels supported by the Chad government doing the same in Darfur. Some 71,000 people used to live in Tineh. Their houses now stand empty.
We are exactly at the border between Sudan and Chad, which is to my right. The buildings we are seeing around here are the buildings of the population that deserted the place during the war, and a number of them are in refugee camps across in Chad.
Last October, one of the rebel factions abducted 38 AU military observers in this sector. 4 AU vehicles and weapons were captured, but the observers were released unharmed. In 2 subsequent attacks by unknown assailants, they weren't so lucky. A November ambush wounded 5 AU soldiers. In January, 1 soldier was killed and 9 were wounded, 5 seriously. AU officials in El Fasher believe the arrival of some 115 Canadian Grizzly armored personnel carriers will improve security. But at remote bases, there is skepticism that the lightly armored APCs will make much difference. An Italian captain serving as an observer for the European Union contrasted the situation here to his 3 tours of duty with the United Nations in Kosovo.
In Kosovo, we experienced a way of working in a contingent with a lot of support, a lot of soldiers on the ground, with more support and more help than here. Here the situation is really very different. I think that this mission needs more power, strength, more people on the ground, 24 hours patrolling, 24 hours checkpoints.
There's not 24-hour coverage of anything now. The AU is so strapped for cash that paychecks for soldiers most months run weeks late. For helicopters, the AU must depend on contract pilots, and none of them work on weekends. Because the force only has access to a single radio frequency, communication depends, incredibly, on cell phones. Some say a UN takeover would solve the problems. A UN peacekeeping mission would draw on dues from all UN members, with a much stronger mandate to protect civilians. But that ignores the spotty record of UN peacekeeping operations elsewhere, and the many months it would take to make the transition. A UN takeover is also problematic because many Sudanese view it as a cover for occupation by white Europeans and Americans, a specter of neo-colonialism that the Muslim rulers of Khartoum have been quick to exploit.
And I think that the people misunderstood the speech of Mr. Kofi Annan and believe that in fact they are going to be invaded by Westerners, and they don't understand, I think, that the idea of the Secretary General was more to assist the peacekeepers. They don't have the means that they should have, they don't have the power that they should have. In any country, wherever you go, on the other side of the Atlantic, on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, here, everywhere, you always find out that a society is made up of 99.9% of nice people, and unfortunately you have always 0.1% of the population which is not nice, and if this population goes to perhaps 0.2%, it's enough for a country to have a problem. We understand that a lot of people in South Darfur are very tired of the conflict, and that a lot of people are trying to do their best to find an issue, which is not easy to find.
We want to really to build peace in South Darfur. And by this, you can see the face, different faces, Arabs, Africans, everyone. You see the dance, people are here, are very happy, and they really want to solve their problem. All the tribal, the conflict in South Darfur are represented here. Now we are for the Gawa, Arabs, and all the African tribes in this conference. And we want to live together. We have no problem in solving the problem. We just need some support, more support from the American government and from the UN and from the others to achieve our peace.
The peace sought by grassroots organizers like Mohammed Tahir will not be easy. The dispute that occasioned this reconciliation conference, a killing in this area, and then in retaliation the burning of a nearby village, remains unresolved 2 months later. The Sudan government has done nothing.
Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. But I don't have a good voice. I'll just send you.
Very good. Sabina Blay, a policewoman from Ghana, is proof that the African Union has made a difference, and that fervent Christians like Blay can find common ground with the overwhelmingly Muslim population of Darfur. The Women's Forum Blay set up in Zamzam Camp, stressing everything from reporting rapes to child care and general nutrition, has been copied throughout the province.
I asked for, and I've always been praying to go on this UN mission, especially when I see people really needed help. How can I reach out to these people to help? So I think it's not a mistake of me being here. It's the right thing that I'm doing. That's my job.
Even someone as well-intentioned as Sabina Blay is severely constrained in what she can do. Her interpreter was transferred, for example. So when the people here talk about problems like spoiled food from aid agencies, she can only guess at what they're saying.
Kalma camp is probably the biggest camp for internally displaced people in the world, with approximately 90,000 people. They are here from all parts of South Darfur and also West Darfur. With 90,000 people living in these conditions, it is a very crowded camp. It's not big in size. It's 7 kilometers long, twice 1.5 kilometers wide. The NGOs, the organizations working here, they provide the people living here with about 22 liters of water per person per day. Welfare program provide the people here with about food equivalent to 2,100 calories per day. The African Union presence has been incredibly important. I was here when they arrived. From the first day, even they were unarmed, the AU, the African Union police, they become a difference in the camp. Gradually, this camp has become more safe, especially after the presence of the protection force from the African Union, the military. And in November, there were 11 incidents, killings, rapes in the area where the Firewood Patrol is organized. And now, in the last months, 4 incidents. So it is a major impact to the better. The Firewood Patrol is organized like in a specific area in the northern part of the camp. 3 times a week, the African Union, together with the government of Sudan's police, they go in from 8 o'clock in the morning. They follow the women going to fetch firewood, and they are with them from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the whole area where they do this work. Approximately 1,000 women go out under their protection and they come back. It is a pleasure to see people doing some sort of a normal life and being protected, being safe.
Aid workers at camps like Kalma are making the best of a bad situation. Nutritional needs are met. There is access to water and health care, even basic schooling. But the massive stripping of this region's wood is a reminder that the situation here is unsustainable. An accidental fire that swept through part of the densely populated camp is a reminder that for many people here, it is also unbearable.
Behind us is the setting of after a fire, which lasted for about 10 minutes today. 373 people lost everything they had, 71 families. It's not only a fire with the tragedy that it implies, but this is also something that reminds them that they have lost everything for a second time. Look around. This is a wave of tents. This is not what they want to have as a life. These people are peasants, people of the land, and they would like to have their life back.
The United States, Sudan, and other governments remain suspended in the same stale debate that has stymied effective action in Darfur for 3 years. Should the UN take the lead? Should NATO? Would Khartoum permit that to happen? Would China or the Arab League? On the ground in Darfur, meanwhile, the people suffer. They lose their homes, livelihoods, and sometimes their lives, caught in a vicious war against civilians that could be contained and perhaps even stopped with a few more helicopters, a few more troops, radios that work, and with something more than open pickup trucks and automatic rifles to take on patrol. The United States doesn't need to wait for a UN resolution. It could act tomorrow, giving the African Union the money it needs to recruit and pay an army of peacekeepers equipped to make and keep a peace. This can appear a complicated issue in the halls of the State Department or Congress or the White House, but to the people of Darfur it is simple, even stark, a matter of life and death.
I cannot decide for the American government. AU cannot decide for the American government. You heard them talking about peace. They want peace tomorrow. How do they get it? It's by international support. So if the American government can support the African Union, to strengthen the African Union financially, anyhow they can do it, then the people of Darfur can see their peace, which they are yearning for every day.